across from 400 West from Lake Ridge Junior High. The four-way stop at 1200 South and 400 West seemed to be a severe bottleneck, and everybody detested that we always had to stop, and we weren't used to stopping in quiet neighborhoods. We had come from Boston, and with my husband mentioned that they used roundabouts. That was in the meeting. And they used rotary intersections instead of four-way stops. When our roundabout was put in on the 5th roadway, Wolverine Way was added. The roundabout was big, but now sometimes the traffic backs up almost to 1060 South, where we live, on 4th West. I get to back out onto 4th West every day. It looks like a bigger roundabout or some other solution is needed at this time. We have lived in cities where the next stop was to make several streets, the next step was to make several streets one-way only streets. And I'm not too excited about that either. And then it would be closed off. College officials told us it would only be used by food services. That's the little road that goes out to the junior high. President do you say Romsberg? Is that right? Romsberg attended some of our meetings, and he and his associates were sincere in making those promises. Over and over, they promised it would never be a paved road, and that though traffic would not, and through traffic would not be permitted. Oh, is that 3 minutes already?
That's 3 minutes.
So sorry.
Thank you. Yes, I have her address. Okay. We'll now hear from Lloyd Evans.
Read fast. I just wish my work time went as fast as that 3 minutes. My name's Lloyd Evans. I've lived in Orem all my life. I was with the Orem City Police Department back in the 70s when we had maybe 1 or 2 lights in the whole city. I live on 3rd West and 12th South, and congestion there in the traffic is getting to be horrendous. Last night, coming back from the scout office, picking up awards for my boys, I waited 15 minutes at the roundabout coming up the hill from UVU. I waited 15 minutes to get through that roundabout because the traffic was all the way from University Avenue there to the Plaza Parkway, all the way down into Lake Ridge. So they're not going to let you in. And so they were in the roundabout blocking it off. These are students. I deal with this every day when I go to work in the morning. You have to time when you leave because of class schedules. If you hit the wrong time, you're going to be stuck on 300 West waiting to go left or right for a number of minutes. So I'd hope the city either reconsiders doing the zoning change that they're looking to do there and on 4th West, or they look at other ways that students can get in and out of the campus besides just 4th West, because it's right now you just can't get through there. The traffic is fast. I watch kids as they try and get across the street to go to school. My own kids have gone to school down there back when it wasn't as hectic. I've lived where I'm at now since 1978. They're on 3rd West, and watched how it's built up. And so I would hope you take the time to think out other ways of trying to solve solutions for university rather than what's been presented. It's just, they park out in front of my house as students. I could call the city and have them come in and ticket them, but I don't know that I want to ticket poor students who are struggling to get through, but yet they don't want to pay for a parking pass on campus, so they park all along our 3rd West, 4th West, 350, even though there's signs there that say they can't. It just, traffic is really bad there now on 12th and as well as on 4th West. Thanks for the opportunity to speak, and I hope you consider this a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from Kevin Warner.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Happy New Year. Kevin Warner, I live here in Orem. I just wanted to come and report on that condo project that you down there on Sand Hill by Walmart, Little South.
The one with the funny name?
Yeah, it's now Running Horse. It was Flying Horse, but Bruce didn't know that social media, anybody, anywhere can find out if that name's been used before. Anyway, we're kind of like, way to go, Bruce. But this is a Bruce Dickerson project. There's 134 two-bedroom, one-bath units, 850 to 900 square feet. There was some concern on the city council and neighbors that this was going to be a bunch of students, there would be cheating and parking problems. So I want to tell you who is in there right now. We have, out of the 134 units, we've got 85 sold. So that's 63%. We've never listed this property. It's got a sign in front of it that's worth its weight in gold. We got 50 out of the, right now, 85 units sold, 51 of those are owner occupied. We've got 34 investors. Who are the owner occupies? We've got 35 married couples. Everyone is in their 20s and 30s. We've got 16 singles, and they're made up of 13 who are in their 20s and 30s, 3 in their 50s and 60s, and they're broken down to 8 females and 8 males. Investors, our experience says that they'll be rented to young couples, and believe me, they find us. These people, I mean, you did a wonderful thing, because this is the most affordable housing, new construction in Orem. And they're so grateful, so happy. We've got the first building moved into. We've got the next building will be in the next, would start in the next 2 weeks. And about 6 weeks later, we'll have the third building starting to be moved into. We broke ground or dug the foundation yesterday for the 5th building. So you did a good thing. Is there any questions? It's always.
Hold on.
Sure.
What's the price range on those now?
We started at 147, and they're selling for 168. And again, you can see that price going up, but we're the only game in town at this price point. The only thing that beats us are somebody that wants a attached garage, a third bedroom, or a second bathroom. But it's been just really rewarding for me to deal with these people that are so grateful to be in the game, so to speak. Thank you.
Thank you for that report. Appreciate it. We'll now go ahead and close the personal appearance portion of our meeting and move on to our schedule items. Our first one is a public hearing amending Section 22-53A and the zoning map of the Orem City Code by changing the zone at approximately 905 South Geneva Road from the R12 zone to the PD 33 zone. And Jason Bench is our presenter.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. The applicants are here. If they want to come forward, they can do that as well.
Yes, could the applicants please come forward? And if you'd introduce yourself. Yes, right here. You push on the red button so it goes up.
Joe Brown.
Yeah, that off of it. So it's up. The red button, you push it so it's... Okay, now you can do it.
There you go. Joe Brown with JDR Resources.
So the request tonight is this triangle piece that's basically just south of their property. Their property is, this piece right up in here. We got 6 of those pieces on the corner. I'll show you the site plan in just a minute. But what they've done is bought the property, this little triangle piece from the UVU. UVU sold them that very recently, and it's currently zoned R12. The PD 33 is the property to the north, and they're requesting that this triangle piece also be brought into that zone. You can see their site plan here. The promenade that we've talked about that was recently completed is this project right here. Their project is then north and east of that property. This is their proposed parking structure that you can see projects over and into that piece, which UVU accommodated them by selling them the property. What they're requesting is that be rezoned, and then they'll come back through the planning commission process for actual site plan approval. Any questions that I can address with this?
Councilor McDonald has a question.
Joe or Jason, could you go back a slide? Back the other one that had, this is what's currently on it, with the exception that the development on the west has actually been more completed than this photo shows, right?
Correct.
But there are houses along that 800 South corridor, is that correct?
Yes.
And those will be removed relatively soon. Joe, what's your timing on construction?
We hope to start construction late spring, so April, May-ish, and so those homes will be taken down the next few months.
I assume those used to be owner-occupied homes years ago, and over the last X years you've been acquiring the property and been renting those out to various people. You're required to give them certain notice to depart, I'm assuming. Is that correct?
Right.
Well,
we will give them 60-day notice.
Okay.
And so that will come in the next few weeks when they get their notices.
And you just weren't able to acquire that last triangle piece when we had zoned this other one into a separate PD zone, but now that you have acquired it, you're asking for it to be part of the same PD zone the rest of the property's in.
Correct.
Is that correct, Jason? And
yes, it was part of UVU, and I don't think UVU ever contemplated being part of that development. It was only until they've contacted UVU saying it's really unusable for UVU, and they realized that, and so they ended up.
So UVU surplused it, and you were the successful bidder on that.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So, Joe, if I remember right, didn't we approve this a couple years ago?
Correct.
Just curious, what's happened during the interim time? Is it just financing, working out all the details?
Yeah, we've just continued to acquire the property, continue to work on our site plan, work on financing, all those different things, timing-wise, when the right time is to construct, and just been working through the process to get us ready to go. And you're building a big project, it just sometimes takes a little longer than you think sometimes, and so things like this come up where you want to acquire a piece of land that you have to work with UVU, who's a great institution, but they're not known for their speed, so sometimes it takes a little longer to go through that process.
On your side, your funding, though, you're strong enough to complete the project. You're ready to go. We're not going to have a hiccup.
I hope not.
Okay.
Yeah, our partnership group consists of several different individuals who have the financial ability to finance this project. We have current commitments from several local banks to finance the project, and so we're in the process of just finalizing those negotiations and those term sheets, and hopefully to be able to close our loan in the next few months as well. So.
Okay, good. Councilmember Lurie.
I have a question about the marketing. Will this be a student project? Will this be families? And can you give us an idea of what the rents will be?
It'll be a student project. It'll consist of 4 bedrooms and 4 baths. So each bedroom will have their own individual bath room, which will be our kind of unique distinguishing feature. The rents will probably be in the $550 to $600 range. That's currently what the Promenade project right next to ours is getting, so it'll be somewhere in that range. And the plan will be to open for the fall of 2019.
Does that include utilities?
Correct. That number will be an all-in number.
And then my question for Jason, the parking ratios on this one, we've been doing 0.8, is that going to also apply?
This is 0.65.
The reason a little less than?
That was this project, the zone itself was approved probably 5 years ago.
Okay, so that was approved originally.
And it was 6.5 was because of the intermodal center and different things like that. Well, we're coming to find out that that may not be adequate, but this project or this zone is already in place, and that is the standard.
Okay, thanks.
Councilmember McDonald.
Okay, so if that's not adequate, what does the owner do?
So we've had that question. So we've met with our management company, Redstone Residential will be most likely be the management company that manages this project for us. And we met with them last week to go through that same very question. They think with the changing dynamics of Uber, Lyft, all the different type of transportations that are happening around the area, that actually 0.65 is going to be plenty for our project. And that's part of the reason for acquiring this land is to extend that parking structure a little bit so we can add a few extra stalls, so we'll be a little above that ratio. So we feel that we'll be, from our research with the market studies and from our management company, we feel we'll be completely fine with those ratios.
But along that,
Okay.
what do you do if you're not? Because the current development there, they're parking all along Geneva Road. They're walking across the street during heavy traffic. It's not an appropriate situation, and that's because they thought they'd be okay as well.
Yeah. So we'll have a few different options on our site. There will be a road that cuts through our site. If you look, can you show that road right there, Jason? Which is currently planned to be an amenity space until UDOT comes and puts that road in. There's opportunity for us to extend parking into that as a temporary basis to see if we need to meet those requirements. Other than that, our options would be just to limit the number of people that we can allow to park with our parking passes.
Are you going to sell parking passes?
Yeah, there'll be some component of that, whether that's included in the rent. There will be some premium parking in this development where they'll be parking underneath the buildings, and so those will be charged a little different fee than just normal parking.
What do you think you'll charge for? So they don't get parking associated with their rental. So the rent is one thing and parking is extra.
So Redstone Residential will be the one that will manage that for us and set that pricing, and they manage Wolverine Crossing. They manage this property next to ours as well. So that will probably be somewhere in that $20 range, which they'll charge for parking.
It's just frustrating because from that standpoint, you push the parking problem onto someone else. They fill up the UTA parking lot. They fill up the university parking lot. They fill up the neighbors' front lots. The need to have adequate parking is aggravated, in my opinion, because then you also charge. And so for somebody that doesn't want to pay for the parking, it's not only that you don't have it available, but they don't want to pay. They say, well, that's fine. I'm going to go park somewhere else, and then create more of a safety hazard and more of a problem for someone else. And I don't know how you solve that, but that's a concern, a very big concern for me.
Yeah.
Councilmember Lenz.
Question on in the triangle, it just kind of takes in that little corner of the parking garage. And I think that shows landscaping just south of there. Is there space where you'd still be able to comply with setback requirements to extend the parking garage further, to add additional parking to, say, get to 0.7 or 0.75?
Yes, the answer to that question is yes. And that's one of the things we're currently exploring right now.
Okay. So I guess part of my question would be if the desire were to adjust that to a higher parking ratio, could we table incorporating this into the PD zone until we can draft this is what level it needs to be at until we're ready to incorporate this into the PDs? In other words, if we decide on 0.7 or 0.75 or 0.8, I think you would need time to figure out what it would cost you to add that onto the parking garage and how many spaces you could get there.
And that would need to be through a development agreement if that was, because the parking ratio is not before you tonight, but in order to that was the condition to rezone the property, or
right, but
then the development agreement would be the issue or the answer.
And you're right that it was approved, but that was approved for the existing PD zone. It's not necessarily, that triangle is not approved as part of the PD zone yet.
Correct.
So I'm saying,
correct.
If that was the desire of the council, we could wait to incorporate that into the PD zone.
If the applicant's willing to enter into that agreement, then yeah, that would be an option.
How many?
Jamie?
May I just to comment and acknowledge the fact that this PD zone was created and is an existing zone.
Yeah.
They're asking to be included in the zone. If, for example, they could go back, modify their site plan, and they would meet that 0.65 requirement. And so, while we acknowledge that there is parking concerns in and around this area, I'm not sure that we can modify a current PD zone to fit. I mean, you could go back and you could adjust your project based on the existing acreage that you have. It just seems more practical to include this triangular piece in your overall development.
And this will actually give us additional parking to be over that 0.65 ratio as well. So in our view, we feel like it's a win-win for everybody. We're able to acquire the piece. We can add a little more parking to help alleviate some of the concerns around parking, and it allows us to have a little better of a project.
So Jason, could you explain to me what's going on there with the road coming down to where that triangular piece is? I mean, you have an overlay.
Yeah, so if and when the 800 South interchange that we've talked about with today in our pre-meeting, that's where that lands. So it comes down and actually hits ground here, and then this will actually, the BRT line, if that interchange is done, will actually use this route instead of going over the 13th South interchange. They would use that new 8th South, come across and use this as their access to the intermodal center.
So are you showing us two different options right here?
No. What was approved by the ordinance is this, my pointer doesn't work.
There you go.
So this is part of the ordinance. When it was approved originally over 5 years ago, that was set aside in the ordinance that would have to be left open. So that if and when that interchange comes through, UDOT would come in and buy that property and put in that road.
Okay.
So that's part of the current ordinance that is required that they leave that.
So that is just landscaping right now?
The landscaping, yeah.
And the other is the actual road coming in,
yes,
going to the two apartments.
Yep.
And then that's going over to where Nelson Brothers is. So is that going into a road there that will be existing with Nelson Brothers?
So the road would come on the backside and into the intermodal, which is over on this side, so that Nelson Brothers would have access to that same road into the intermodal.
But up here, just go up where the Nelson Brothers name is?
They would not have access on 8 South. The actual...
Okay. That's what my question was.
Yeah, the slope would actually take in that frontage, and there would not be access for Nelson's Brothers on 8 South.
Okay.
That's why we've required them to have this access brought over and stubbed into this, so they would have access here out to 8 South or to that current road that will be installed if that 8 South is brought in.
And then, Joe, so what is your plans for that property? I mean, you're showing it as the way it's laid out here on this diagram.
So I'll add one comment to you about timing as well. One thing that took a long time on this project was working with UDOT on delineating that intersection right there. Okay. That took a full year of working with them as well to just figure out that intersection. But yes, our plan is to have the parking garage and then also landscape it as well. Okay. Is the plan.
All right. Jamie, do you have some additional information? Or?
No, I was just answering a question for Councilmember Seastream.
Okay. Any other comments from the council?
One question, just out of curiosity, Jason, if it weren't at the 0.65, or how many spaces are required at the 0.65?
How many spaces are they proposing?
Yeah.
689.
0.85, how many spaces would require? Do you?
I'd have to do the math.
Would that be another 200, 150?
200 probably, yeah.
A couple hundred?
Another 200.
Yeah.
I'd have to look at the math.
I'm just trying to gauge how many short we think we're going to be. And you guys think you're right on at 65 with people. What do they currently do with people that don't pay? So you have a tenant that doesn't want to pay the $20 a month for parking. What do they do?
If I believe how Redstone usually handles it is like any student project, they usually have a towing enforcement if they're not paying and have their their little parking passes with displayed in the window, they'll be towed.
Yeah, but so if I don't pay and I don't want to be towed, I'm going to park somewhere. Where would you expect them to typically park in this area?
I don't know. I mean, they'd have to find a place they're going to park and walk. I mean, I don't know how we can control.
Again, kind of compounds that problem, doesn't it?
What we found with Promenade is that they're parking on Geneva Road, they're parking on 8 South, they're parking in the church across the street, and they're probably parking in the UTA parking lot as well. It ends up to being 159 more spaces.
Thank you.
So on being on 8 South there, if you were parking along the road on 8 South on the south curb, would that be redlined?
Most likely not, only towards the intersection on Geneva Road. It may be a portion of that redlined, but because that's part of their project, it probably would not be redlined.
So they on 8 South would be parking all along that road out on 8 South?
Probably.
But they're parking there, the residents can park there right now anyway?
Correct.
That are renting those homes. Are there people renting the homes now?
We have a few.
Okay.
And we don't, as staff, we don't have a problem with people parking on a public street. That's not the issue.
Sure.
The issue is if we have a higher density development, and then theoretically you should park your own cars on your property. By using that as an excuse, I'm not talking about these, but as an excuse in general, well, it's a public street, I can park there. That's, I think, where staff has some issue with, solve your own problem. And if there's a few cars that park on the public street, that's fine. But when your majority or 25% of your stalls are on the public street, then that's an issue for us.
And one concern is not just 8 South, but actually those roads going up into those neighborhoods where they could end up going and parking right there. I know, Jamie, we've had, a situation over at UVU where we have the permit parking. Is that feasible for this neighborhood to do permit parking?
I mean, any neighborhood can do permit parking. I know, obviously, parking is a concern, and it's something that we're mindful of, and it's an emerging concern based on, for example, representations that were made years ago that suggested a certain ratio would work, and now we're kind of struggling to see if, in fact, it does work. And our staff is developing an ordinance that hopefully can speak to these things prospectively.
Right.
But now we're working through what has been, for example, in this case, as represented by Mr. Brown, something that was approved 5 years ago.
Right.
So prospectively, I think we can adequately address this. Yes, residential neighborhoods can come in and they can make application for a parking permit program, and there are single-family neighborhoods, for example, in proximity to this development and others, and they would have that opportunity.
Okay. All right. Councilmember Lentz.
So, Jason, question on the possibility of a development agreement. So if we theoretically were to postpone our vote on incorporating this into the PD zone until we could come to an agreement on what we consider an acceptable level of parking, if that property then changes hands, is that same development agreement transferable to their successors as well?
It would be binding, yes.
So, I'm not necessarily as concerned with the logistics of do we change the existing PD zone that was approved years ago, or do we have a development agreement? But my concern is, as we've seen what's happened in the last few years, I think the parking has become more of an issue in that time than what was anticipated. And if that interchange along 800 South, if that's one of the top interchange proposals in the state that we would expect, I'm not sure we can put a specific timeline on it, but I want to make sure that we are thinking ahead to what that street and that corridor will look like 10 or 20 years from now as well. And so that would be my concern, is can we utilize, whether it's that space that's in that little triangle there to expand the parking garage, or something else that would work better for you guys to increase the parking ratio. That would be my preference.
And just as a reference point as well, that all the homes along 800 South will, on both sides of the road, will eventually go away. Just as you know that as well, when the 800 South interchange is built. So UDOT's acquired all those homes.
Okay. Any other comments from the council? Okay, this is a public hearing, so we'll go ahead and open it up to the public. Anyone who would like to come forward has the right to speak for 3 minutes. And please give us your name and when you do so.
My name is Dave Hunter, Orem city resident. I would have dressed a little better. I just came from something in Salt Lake and didn't have time to go home and change. So excuse the.
Your coat looks fine.
I'm part of the development group, and two things that I really want to emphasize. A, Redstone is the gorilla of student housing management in Utah County. They're one of the biggest in the western United States. They are massive. We've had extensive meetings with them about parking because we don't want to be the group that doesn't adequately park this. They have definitive stuff that parking is, and I know when you go to Promenade, you say, hey, that's not the case there. But in the last 5 years, parking requirement is declining, and parking capacity, parking need is declining. They said by the time this project is done, our 0.65 will be probably ample, and if not, within a couple of years, it will be ample. They have the data. They have they are showing that the people coming to campuses with cars is declining. With the approval of the footbridge across, they've approved the footbridge that's going from the track station into the heart of UVU campus with Lyft, with the intermodal being literally yards away from us. We're relying on Redstone to make sure that is accurate, and they're saying that our parking is going to be accurate. The other thing I want to say too is if we table this for tonight, and I know that 30 days to 60 days doesn't sound like a lot, but that will kill this project for being completed in 2019. We will have to table it for a year. We are full guns, fully waiting right now to get this thing off. Our partners on this right now are Layton, and Dave Layton personally is a partner on this project. We are running full steam, and our meeting today was days at this point matter, and if we get tabled for 30 days, we will not hit that deadline.
And the deadline you're really trying to meet is to have it open in time for school.
In student housing,
could you miss the whole year?
It has to be August 1st of that year, and it doesn't matter if it's 19, 20, 20. It has to be that August. If you finish in October, it's devastating. You can't do it.
Your projected date for opening is what?
Is August 1st. We want sprinkling 2019.
Okay.
And that's and I know that sounds like that's a long way away to table this, but it won't. We'll leave this meeting, call Layton, and say that we're tabled, and that will probably crush the momentum on this right now. And I have the feeling it's going towards the parking discussion, and we had hours-long discussion about parking with them, and that it forced decline in this market, and especially this TOD project, where we are right on the tracks, we are right on the pedestrian bridge. People are going to be very incentivized to come to this project without a car because they can do everything they need to do. They can get to the airport, they can get to class, they can get wherever they need to be right from the front door of our apartments.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, if not, we'll bring it back to the council and close the public comment portion of our public hearing. So I had a couple of questions. Jason, in this area, in that student area, we have some complexes with 0.80 parking. We have some with 0.65. Is that correct?
Yeah, the student housing overlay zone, which is on the east side, is at 0.8. The projects on the Parkway Crossing and then the Parkway Lofts, and those are at 0.65, with the idea that it was going to be next to the tracks and different things. So there was a conscious effort to say, okay, it's going to be part of the intermodal area, so we reduce some of the parking. So next to UVU is 0.8.
Right, but I mean on this right here, you've got
0.65, yeah.
You have other complexes there that are 0.65.
Yes.
And do you have others that are 0.8 or mostly 0.65?
All on this side, so Parkway Crossing, Parkway Lofts, which is almost 100% occupied.
Wolverine Crossing.
University Downs, which is potentially under construction, and then Promenade Place and this one are all 0.65.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Good. Any other comments from the council?
I'll make a comment. I appreciate your comments. I know from a standpoint of what we decided to do 5-6 years ago when we first developed the transit-oriented design, the TOD zone, was with that assumption, and it was specifically designed to be around the train station for those very reasons you cited. And I think we felt pretty confident based on the studies and the analysis that was put together back then to say that that ought to be pretty good. I think a few of the factors that have made an impact on that over the years has been that while it's trending in that direction, I don't know that it is there yet. And we see people that want to live in a transit-oriented type area or in a higher density area, and they don't want to use their car, but they still bring a car. They still own one for those times when they do need to make an unplanned trip. So I don't know that they've fully made that switch to be completely independent. And we've had this discussion with Provo City. They had similar issues where they've had a number of projects that were zoned at the 0.65, and they've said it has created a challenge for the entire neighborhood because the parking wasn't adequate. So that's the one thing in my mind is to say, okay, we've got the ratio that I do believe is going in that direction, but I get really frustrated with the additional aspect of that you charge for parking for a place, which then motivates people to not park in the parking stalls that are designated for the residents, and the end result is you may have plenty of you may come and say, Councilmember Seastrand, we have 40 stalls that never get filled. Yet we've got 60, 70, 80 people that are parking in the neighborhood or in their surrounding areas.
The entire parking structure is free parking. What maybe, and Joe said it, but maybe didn't get understood, is we'll be charging for premium spots right next to your door, underneath the building, but the parking structure will be free parking.
So okay, that helps. So with that, would there be adequate parking? And I'm thinking through thoughts here because it's the idea is to say, and you mentioned it, you don't want to have a negative impact. You want this to be a great place to rent, to live, because you don't have to walk a half a mile when you find a place to park, that you've got adequate parking for what your needs are. And I sincerely hope that it's at that point where the 0.65 is adequate. I'm on the flip side saying is if it's not, how do we address that? And what are the aspects that can be dealt with in terms of changing your pricing structure on parking to better encourage people to fully utilize it, or finding another place to lease parking, to say, look, we don't have room here, but we do have, we've bought some additional land that you've got a parking lot across the street. I just look at that from a long-term standpoint to say, I know from when you got in on the project that the 0.65 is what's required, and you're fully meeting the compliance of that with the project. I understand that, while I respect Mr. Lentz's wish to say let's tie some hooks on this to make it do it, I don't know that that's a fair thing to do because you came in fully complying with what's going on. But I don't think it really mitigates that there could be a problem. And what can we do to work together to make sure that the problem stays as your problem and not the rest of the area's problem?
And so that you understand, we take that very seriously, and that's why we got Redstone involved, who is legitimately the gorilla in this. And we bought that piece from UVU. We didn't think UVU was ever going to landscape it.
Yeah.
We bought it just to landscape it, but we do have the capacity to pull the parking down. So in figuring this out with Layton and Redstone, it was a sincere discussion of, guys, do we need to do that? So this is a better project because we want a better project, not just from a capitalistic standpoint, but we want to be good neighbors.
Yeah.
And they said, guys, we have the definitive data that it is declining. We have 5 years of data that says that people buying cars is declining, and that trend is not. It's not a slope like this, but it is a slope like this. And maybe when we open doors, there might be some issues. But if the trend continues in 3 years, we'll have empty spaces, even in the free parking. And that was a very sincere. Dave Layton doesn't want to do a project. He doesn't want to be a bad neighbor. And we came to the conclusion that with the data they had and what we're talking about, we are going to be fine. And we don't want to be the guys that have people parking in the church parking lot. And we are, from me to Dave Layton to Joe, we are all comfortable now that is the trajectory it's going. And with the addition of the footbridge and everything else, that should be great. And we still are just going to landscape our triangle, so we're also good neighbors there, that we didn't, that we're just not leaving a weed patch that UVU is never going to take care of.
I think the only, I mean, the scenario is we can find a way to solve it, and if what you have is adequate, then great, then the problem isn't there. If the problem comes up, then as a city, we have to look at it and say, okay, do we red curb Geneva Road? And then that says, okay, well, now they can't park there. Where are they going to park? Well, then do we turn the church parking lot as anything parked overnight becomes towed? And then they can't park there. And then do we do the same thing with the UTA parking to where it's now monitored? And pretty soon you don't have any place for your overflow parking to be effective, which then I think it solves the problem in the neighborhood, but it doesn't solve the problem that's generating the parking. And so
is where UDOT has they don't even have an option. They don't have a lien. They don't have anything. They don't have an easement on that big chunk that they're eventually going to buy from us. It's a 1 to 30 year plan, and our plan is that we can mobilize it very quickly. Is if we do have an issue in year 1 or 2, that we can park in that where our field is going to be, and as that trajectory keeps going down, then we will press it back in, waiting for UDOT in the next 1 to 30 years for them to purchase it. And we don't see that because the pricing for that interchange came back. I don't think it's going to happen in the next 5 years. Yeah. So I think for our short term, if there is an issue in the short term, that is our backup plan.
Okay. Is Jamie and City, I'm just kind of thinking out loud, is there, I mean, it would be really good to get some element of reporting back from the development just for our own learning and understanding, as far as after this project is complete, that you're able to continue to do some traffic study and you can tell us what, you know, how many residents, how many actually have cars, and where are they parking, and was that a reasonable expectation as far as
I was really impressed with the gentleman that stood up in that 3-minute public comment and reported back on the detail on his project, and I thought that was very informative and something that we would be happy to come back to the city and continue to update on parking questions and the other issues about the question about is it student, is it those type of things, just to report back. That'd be no problem and easy to do.
I would like to see if there's some way to do some longer term planning and follow up to really address the problem long term if we could. So thank you. I appreciate the comments. I do.
Councilmember Lentz.
So as far, and I appreciate your comment about the timeline, you know, time is of the essence here and days matter. And you mentioned 30 to 60 days could mean you miss an entire year on the project. Would 2 weeks kill that year as well? And I'm not even sure if we could, you know, come to a development agreement within 2 weeks to address the parking issue. But just from your timeline, do 14 days when our next council meeting is going to be held?
We're supposed to sign contracts with some of the major suppliers on Friday, this coming Friday, assuming that this had gone well. And again, that was just today, where the statement of days are days right now with us. We've got it scheduled down to, we have a 30-day buffer in the entire project to get it done on August 1st.
Are there, well, it would probably be unfair to say, can you get some of that work done not knowing, you know, if there is uncertainty over what it, oh, okay. With that space that's in the triangle, how many additional spots do you think you could potentially add? So leaving the rest of the project as is, if you lengthen the parking garage, how many additional spaces could you fit?
I mean, off the top of my head, 100, but I have no idea. And again, trying to do a quality project, that right now is contemplated as green space and gathering space. So we're either going to give up trees and grass for parking, which could be the trade-off. But again, we're trying to preserve some sort of green in this.
Thank you.
Councilmember McDonald.
Jason, could you use a red pen or something to show us, is the whole item going to be developed immediately? Are all those buildings being built simultaneously?
Yes.
So it's going to be one project, and so the triangle, what's the property you're talking about future selling to UDOT, the street basically?
The street, yep.
Okay.
This, between this or sidewalk and this sidewalk.
Right. So if I understand correctly, if this property doesn't have, if there's a space problem and Geneva's red lined or red curbed, excuse me, and there's not parking, they have a solution to their problem if they could add at some other point additional parking.
They could.
Right.
Yep.
So if we don't approve this particular zoning of this little triangle, they move that parking garage a little bit smaller, they make some minor adjustments, and we haven't fixed much of anything. But doing this gives them at least an access and an opportunity to fix it in the future, in my opinion. So
Yep.
I think getting them that piece of property improves where we're at versus make it, I think it makes it better, not worse. Jason, do you have an opinion on that?
I don't. I just want to make a comment that I've known Dave for almost 20 years, and he's done a lot of projects in Provo when I worked there, and he's a man of his word. So if he tells me he's going to solve the problem in the future because there is a problem, I'm assured that he will solve that.
Well, it's to his economic interest to solve
Exactly.
the problem. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments from the council? I'd just like to make a couple of comments. I have been over there at night counting cars in the parking lots of the other complexes to see how that works. And those that have a .65 actually have some open spaces, and that was before Promenade came in or anybody parking on Geneva Road. We have other complexes there that are at .65, and we did approve you previously at .65. So I feel like it's, if you're looking at it fair on both sides, you've been approved and you should be allowed to do that. Looking at the bridge going in, I think that's going to be a huge help, and you're going to be very close to where the bridge is. So I believe that people are going to want to use that bridge rather than drive cars over to UVU. The BRT, of course, is coming in, and the BRT will take people as well. And of course, we have the front runner there. So I see a lot of reasons why this particular, what you would call a TOD situation, has a lot of advantages towards less cars rather than more. So with that said, I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to move that the Orem City Council by ordinance amend section 22-5-3A and the zoning map of the Orem City Code by changing the zone on a parcel of property located at approximately 905 South Geneva Road from the R12 to the PD 33 zone. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. We will go ahead and start with council.
Could I make a question on that?
Sure.
Is it possible to include in the amendment that there's also some follow-up reporting after the project's done, that we get parking reports back from them on, say, twice a year basis or something? Just from a standpoint.
I don't know that you could put that into this necessarily.
Is that possible?
But I believe their word's good enough that they'll do that.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
Let's.
If I may, without a formal agreement, it would simply be a request, and it sounds like Dave is willing to follow through with that request.
Thank you.
So I don't want to put that in the motion, but I think they will follow through. So we do have a second, so I want to start with Councilmember Sumner.
Aye.
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 Okay. Appreciate it.
Thank you for working with us on trying to figure it out.
Thank you, Council.
Ordinance passes, and we'll move on to our next one, which is an ordinance amending 2-23 of the Orem City Code to provide the Summerfest Advisory Committee with 2 additional members, the recognition of a vice chairperson position, the creation of a subcommittee to secure and maintain sponsorships, as well as other minor amendments. Our presenter is Steve Downs. I've probably given everything away already, but we'll go ahead and hear from
Any questions about the proposal? Steve Downs, Deputy City Manager, and with me,
John Ditto, Assistant City Attorney. Oh, sorry, push that button. Oh, there we go. John Ditto, Assistant City Attorney.
As the mayor mentioned, we're just coming forward with some code changes to our Summerfest celebration, our Summerfest committee that we have in our city code. So, pretty brief, we've mentioned this before, but there's a creation of a subcommittee. In our current code, it talks about subcommittees in general, but this will be the first official subcommittee that's been created, which will be titled our Partnership Subcommittee. Its purpose is to strengthen partnerships and secure sponsorships.
So, Steve, a question. What is a partnership?
Partnerships with just different companies, organizations within the community, just to work as partners to bring
with the city, the community members with the city. That's the partnership.
That's the partnership.
Okay.
And yep. To appropriately recognize the sponsors, provide advice to Summerfest Advisory Committee on high-level items such as Grand Marshal, entertainment, etc. It'll consist of a sponsorship chair and some community members at large. And they'll be appointed by the mayor with the advice and consent of the city council, which is the same way that our current Summerfest committee is appointed. There are some other changes within the what's before you tonight. One is to increase the number of committee members in our Summerfest committee from 9 to 11, and that's exclusive of the subcommittee members.
And can you just tell me real quick the thinking behind that?
Yeah, there's been a lot of growth with the number of events that go on during Summerfest, and they needed some additional manpower to be able to head up these different events. So each one would be assigned a different thing that they oversee.
Okay.
It eliminates language. There was some initial language when the committee was organized that talked about drawing lots and staggering terms for the initial one so that not everybody came off at the same time. Obviously not applicable anymore, so we cleaned that language up. It also allows those employed in the city to serve the same as residents of the city. We currently have somebody that's with Timpanogos Hospital, who doesn't live in the city, but the company he works for, who's a partner with the city. He serves in their stead. So we wanted to allow him to continue service the same way a resident would. It also codifies a position of vice chair, which has existed but has never been officially codified. So that's all the changes. If you have any questions about the subcommittee, I can answer those, and John, of course, can speak to anything regarding the code.
Councilman Lentz.
So just to clarify, if you could go back a slide. So 9 to 11, going from 9 to 11 members, exclusive of subcommittee members. So the subcommittee members, are you saying they're no longer part of the 11? Are they separate?
They're separate. Yeah, they're separate in this number.
And is there a cap on how many members that subcommittee can grow to?
7.
That's 7.
So typically it'll be some members at large, a sponsor, or the sponsorship chair. And then there'll be times, as in some other organizations they do like this, where the previous chair, if they're going to no longer be serving on the Summerfest committee, they would go on to this for a year just to keep some continuity. But in many cases, our chair remains on the Summerfest committee the following year. They're just no longer serving at the chair. So we wanted to have a little bit of buffer, 5 to 7, so that we had room for a previous chair if needed.
So is the core committee, not the subcommittee, do they decide who's going to branch off into the subcommittee, or?
No, there'd be an application process similar to our subcommittee, or somebody would apply to be on that, and then those names would come to you for approval and consent.
So should we put in the language that the subcommittee is 5 to 7 members, since we're putting in the number of committee members?
It's up to 7.
So we don't see it on the screen?
It's not on the PowerPoint. Didn't make the cut for the PowerPoint.
Okay, but you have it in the language that it's up to 7 members?
Up to 7, right.
Okay.
So that allows flexibility. So
that's fine. I just wanted to make sure it's codified the same as the committee member number is. So, okay. Any other questions, comments? Councilmember Larry?
My committee assignment last year was to be in the Summerfest, so I know a lot of diligent work has been done. I just want to thank Kenna and her committee, and there's been a lot of thoughts. So I think this is good. I think this gets us to where we want to be. It explains the growth. It also helps with the fundraising. So I think the work here has been really good, and so I just wanted to say thank you. And from a lawyer to Stephen to the rest of the committee, there's been a lot of, and I've also spent many hours looking at this, so I feel good about the changes.
Any other comments? Councilmember Sumner, you look like you've got a thought. Nope?
No.
Okay. So if there's no further thoughts, this is not a open hearing. So we'd like to go ahead and make a motion. Debbie, would you like to make the motion under the recommendation there as it's listed?
I move that the city, by ordinance, amend Article 2-23 of the Orem City Code to provide the Summerfest Advisory Committee in quotes, with 2 additional members, the recognition of a vice chairperson position, the creation of a subcommittee to secure and maintain sponsorships, as well as other minor amendments.
And do we need to put up to 7 members on the subcommittee?
It's in the
It's in the code.
Okay, just want to make sure. Okay.
Second.
Okay, Councilmember McDonald second it. Okay, we'll start with Councilmember Sumner.
Aye.
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 Okay, the ordinance passes. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Okay, we'll move on. Do we have any items from the city manager?
Mayor, I just have one item. You recall several months ago we had a conversation about, as we've continued through our branding process of changing out our city flag, and there were 2 options that were, sent out. Well, there were 4 options that were sent out to the community for review and comment, and 2 came back having the most favorable responses. So we moved forward and made flags of both these top options, and we wanted to show them to you before we send them to permanent print and mount them or raise them on our flagpoles. So,
Steve, do you want to come up and help hold one so we can see it?
We talked about wrapping them around us and running around yelling "Ole, ole!" But so this is the
little decorum, please.
This is the one with the city's name, and this is the mock-up without the city's name.
So could we have each one of the council members maybe tell us their thoughts on the 2 flags?
There's no runway, so we're just going to...
Okay. Starting with Councilmember Sumner, would you like to go ahead?
I like the name on there, and I know that was against somebody's rules. I don't know, but I like the name on there.
Generally accepted flag principles.
Yeah.
Okay. Councilmember Seastrand.
I like them both, but I can stick with the flag principles if we need to.
I like the one with the name. I think we're not wide enough well known that flies somewhere. In a town of 90,000, that's one thing. In a country of 300 million, it's a difference. So I think we need the name.
I agree with Tom. I think we need the name, and I like it.
I think the flag looks a lot cleaner and would be more timeless without the typeface on there, but it's not something I'm going to lose any sleep over. So,
fine either way.
I like the Orem. That's who we are, so I like it.
You like the name? Okay. Debbie?
I did watch that TED Talk about not putting your name on it, so, but I think the name is fine. Maybe over time, as it's more recognizable, you can eventually, when you replace flags, take it off. I don't know. But the Orem doesn't look very centered to me on that flag, so if I were going to, I would want to make sure that Orem is, it looks too far to this way. It needs to go that way.
Centered with the canyon versus the...
Yeah, that's right.
I'm just saying that would bug me.
No, the idea was to line it up in the canyon.
Yeah, I like it in the canyon.
We could add Utah to make sure people know which state as well.
Could you add all the zip codes for Orem too?
I actually like the canyon as well. It kind of catches your attention where it looks.
Can I see both, though? I mean, I want to see what's centered and with not, because right now that
All right, so you got to get another flag and bring it back to us.
No, you can show me a mock-up on the computer.
Okay. So I think the name has it, and then we'll decide on where the name's at.
7 people surveyed. Go with the
5 to 2.
5 out of the 7 went for the name. So.
Sorry, Mark.
Anything else?
No, sir.
Okay. And with that being said, I would accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. We're adjourned.